Hello everyone, welcome to the Comic Gamer Movie Show. My name's Deshaun, and today I'm here to make this video to set the record straight. How does time travel work in the MCU? Now, this has been a question that has been asked ever since the release of Endgame. Endgame is coming up on almost a year since its release, and this is a question that has been asked for a very long since the movie came out, particularly about Captain America. Now, I've kind of avoided talking about this one because I know that I know out of all the questions, out of all the outcomes in Endgame, this is the one that gets the most conversation going. This is the one that people disagree with about the most. But as far as I've seen, evidence from the movie, evidence from the directors, time travel in the MCU works like this. When you go back in time, you can't change what already has happened, and you can't change what already is. All you can do is create a branch reality where things turned out differently from the point where you went back on forward. That's all. So time travel in the MCU isn't like Terminator or like Back to the Future. You can't go back in time and change what already is, and you can't and what already isn't time isn't this thing where you going back in time, you're not actually changing time, you're just doing something that already happened, like the whole John Connor thing, how the irony that the fucking machines are the creation of John Connor, who eventually destroys Skynet. Basically, the machines are destined to lose no matter what. Like, there's a circle and they're destined to lose no matter what. Now, Terminator Dark Fate kind of played with that a little bit, but like at the time, that was what it was. Like, the machines were destined to lose no matter what. They were destined to create their own greatest nemesis. And that is fine. Now, just to throw this out here to people, if you can Google it, you can go on YouTube. There's only two ways that scientists have agreed that how it would work, how time travel would work. First of all, most scientists think that you can't travel back, you can only travel forward. But even then, most scientists have agreed, theoretically, time travel is not a real thing. There is no real science behind time travel. There's no real evidence that it can really be done. There's just theories, and they're just fun theories. But there's only two theories that people ever subscribe to, that scientists will accept and go, that's the only way that it could go down, is one, the Terminator way, and two, the Endgame way. Those are the two ways that time travel is usually accepted. Either when you go back in time, you don't go back into your own time and change anything, you just create a branch timeline like Endgame. Or when you go back in time and change something, you don't actually go back in time and change something. Think it was already like that. You going back in time was what you were supposed to do. It already happened. You were destined to do it. When you went back, you didn't actually change anything. It was always going to work like that. And I've seen so many people, I've gotten in arguments at work about the Endgame time travel, about people going, well, that's stupid. I don't like that. I'm like, why don't you like that? Because Back to the Future said. And they even make jokes about it in Endgame, about Back to the Future, about all these other time travel movies, and about how scientifically it doesn't make any sense. And I'm not a scientist, but when it was explained to me in Endgame by Hulk, when he was talking to Paul Rudd, it did dawn on me. I'm like, how does that make any sense? How can something that exists just not exist anymore? How can matter? I'm not a scientist, but that just doesn't, like, there's just something about that just never quite made sense to me. I'm like, wait a minute, how can you exist and then not exist? You've already existed. And then the problem with that whole time travel theory is, in Back to the Future, everyone said, in Back to the Future, I thought this when I saw the movie, I was like, wait a minute. So if you go back in time and prevent your father from being with your mom, so you're never born, so you disappear. But if you do that, you were never born, so shouldn't you be never here to even be able to interrupt this? It goes down this convoluted path. The simplest solution is that the Endgame and Terminator have the simplest, most logical solutions. You don't actually change the past, you just alter a different timeline. And a lot of people were confused about that, and even the writers and directors have mixed feelings about that. Though I don't understand how the writers have mixed feelings about that, because they said it in the movie. Hulk said it in the movie. The Ancient One said it in the movie. The director said it in the movie. When Captain America went back in time to spend his life with Peggy, he didn't change their timeline. Peggy Carter still lived on found S.H.I.E.L.D. Cap was still dead in her timeline. Cap still lived everything that happened. Everything that happened in the MCU, this 5-year gap without people, everything happened. Nothing changed when Cap went back in time. Except there's just an alternate reality where Captain America lived a happy ever after life with Peggy Carter. That's it. There's an alternate timeline where things went differently. That's still out there because the only way he can close it up, because there's no way he can really close it off because he lived it. So there's just another alternate timeline out there where things went differently. That's all. That is it. The whole thing about the Earths being like destroyed or the Earths being threatened by the Infinity Stones being gone, that's the Infinity Stones. But that's not how it works about going back in time and just doing something different. You just create a branch timeline. You create a branch timeline, and depending on what happened in that branch timeline, everything either goes good or bad. But the fact of the matter, Captain America's already lived through our timeline, so he knows what's going to happen. So chances are his timeline was probably like a utopian perfect timeline, since he knows everything that happens and everything that will happen up to a certain point. But yeah, I see a lot of people who are still confused about the in-game time travel. I've seen like there was, and I really only wanted to make this video because I saw a lot of people talking about Captain America's ending, and was it selfish to, she moved, like Peggy moved on. It was selfish for you to, come back, and you should have moved on too. And it's just like, and then they're like, people start arguing about Captain America, if he should have moved on, if he shouldn't have went back, and then I started to dawn on me. I'm just like, none of this matters. It didn't change that. Because some people were like talking about Agent Carter, and they're like, oh, Peggy moved on. He took this from us, Marvel. No, they fucking didn't. Are you guys morons, or do you just not pay attention to movies? Nothing changed. Nothing. There's just an alternate reality where Captain America got to live happily ever after. And I got in arguments with people on Twitter about it because I was like, they're like, oh, he moved on, she moved on. No. People who move on because they have no choice but to move on. Not because, oh, they want to fuck. You know why Peggy and Steve moved on? Or tried to move on? Because they didn't know there was an option to be together. Steve found out there's an option to be with Peggy. There's an option. I can go back and get that life that I always wanted. I've always wanted. He never felt comfortable. He never truly felt comfortable being around all of this stuff. Not really. He adjusted, but not really. He still misses Peggy. He still misses that life he could have had. If he would have been with Sharon, I always thought in my heart, like, I would have rolled with it, because I would have been like, this is the direction they chose to go in. I would have went this way, but you know what? I would have rolled with it if they would have chose to have him be with Sharon. But the thing is, Sharon would have just been a shell. She would have been just a hollow replacement for the true love of his life. That's all she would have been. And he got to spend the time with the love of his life with no consequences. Which, that's what some people come at too. It's like, oh, why don't they just... Like, the funny thing is, like... And that's what people will come at too, like, well, consequences. It's like, but if you can, why wouldn't you? It's kind of like that Rhodey thing. When Rhodey got paralyzed in Civil War, a lot of people were like, when Tony made those kind of gave him this like robotic leg harness thing to help him walk, a lot of people were like, oh, there's no consequences, he just gave him legs. I'm like, if you can, why wouldn't you? What the fuck kind of idiotic thing is that? Like, Tony Stark can make robots, but he can't give me a pair of legs if I'm paralyzed from the waist down? Of course he can. Why would Tony Stark send Peter Parker out there in a cloth suit? A freaking 16-year-old kid. Look at how strong he is. Tony's not putting a 16-year-old kid out there in a cloth suit. Like, that's the thing I don't get from people. It's things of that nature. So when Steve went back in time to be with Peggy, he didn't change anything. That's how time travel works in the MCU. Which basically means that the Days of Future Past thing from the X-Men can't be done in the MCU, current MCU, because they can't do it, because you can't actually change your past. But I just wanted to make this video. How does time travel work in the MCU? Do you guys agree with me, or do you think that it is what the writers say? I think all the evidence in the MCU has pretty much, in Endgame, has pretty much pointed towards time travel working this way. Like, you go back and create alternate timelines. It gives a lot of fun, too, because now you can have all these alternate branch timelines where things turned out differently with different characters. Like, I mean, I would love to see what that alternate timeline that Captain America spent time in. And the Russo brothers kind of played with it a little bit, because they were kind of like, well, yeah, I know, that'll be something for another guy to write one day. And I was like, I want to see it. I want to see that what if. I want to see, like, what if Captain America didn't leave Peggy? Like, I want to see it. But thank you guys for joining the Comic Game Movie Show. Please remember to like, subscribe. Do you agree with me, or do you agree with other people? Please comment below, let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.